I can't believe it! The guy's already saved 100 people at least. Look, he's got more!
Fear not, citizens, because I am here.
My Hero Academia is really popular right now, and I don't think it's that good. Now, hang on a second. I still like it, a lot. I wouldn't be watching the anime and caught up with the manga if I didn't. So I'm not here to just be some egocentric edgelord on the internet who blatantly hates on anything mainstream just to look cool. I'm just not seeing all the hype. To me, My Hero Academia is just another shonen. A good one, but another shonen nonetheless. And I like shonen. Dragon Ball is cool, Naruto is iconic, and Black Clover exists. I got into Hiroaka just as Season 2 was ending and was able to watch the whole series up to that point on a 100% totally legal non-pirating site. Afterwards, I picked up on where the manga left off and binge read my way up to the latest chapter, which was somewhere in the Overhaul arc if I'm correct. So yeah, I was hooked, but I still got some issues. I don't really have a central point for this video, which is why it's just titled A Video About My Hero Academia. I just want to semi-rant about stuff that I like and don't like in the series. Whether or not you agree with my thoughts and opinions is up to— wait a second, why does this feel so familiar? Okay, so a while back on this channel, I made a video about My Hero Academia titled A Video About My Hero Academia. It was an admittedly mediocre review/analysis, and in it I made a bunch of points surrounding how I felt about the series as it stands. Then it got blocked. Even after I'd gone back and re-edited the footage on like 3 separate occasions to fit copyright regulations, I still couldn't beat the power of corporate YouTube.
Duh.
So I just gave up. However, I'm gonna redo it. Since the original had a lot of mistakes and issues with the writing and recording process anyways, I've decided to remake it all from scratch. I'll be reading from pretty much the same script that I used before, except with some tweaks here and there, and the editing will work in a way that my screen isn't just filled with footage the whole time. So, like the last one, there's no real point to all of this. I'm just stating random thoughts and opinions I have on this anime. Whether or not you agree with what I say is up to you. Now let's get on with it. Season 1 was a pretty good start to the series. It establishes the type of world and cast that we're working with and has an admittedly cool premise. A world where almost everyone possesses a superpower or uncanny ability of some kind, which they can grow and develop. That sounds dangerous. You really expect people to function in a world where someone could just come up behind them in the middle of a mall with a disintegration quirk and melt their neck off? Oh wait. Now, the series is at least self-aware about this point because the government is constantly at work to regulate quirk users with licenses and other stuff, and they're doing the best they can. I mean, if people across the globe suddenly started popping up with frog faces or laser vision in our world, the only solution I could think of is— As for the plot, it's basic enough for anyone to get into. A frail underdog protagonist is born with less than others, but gets recognized by higher up in the system, who trains them to surpass their limits and become the world's greatest hero. I really like that line as well. This is the story of how I become the world's greatest hero. It's not saying that our main character, Deku, is gonna unlock Super Saiyan 4, grow wings, and become an untouchable OP god. If anything, I'm pretty sure that Bakugo is gonna become more physically stronger than he'll ever be. But characters like Bakugo lack the heart of a true hero. Deku is gonna become the world's greatest hero because that means more than just power. It means bringing hope to the hopeless. Being an inspirational figure who puts those around them at ease, which is a great thing for the creator to acknowledge. Most shonen stories simply have their characters getting bigger muscles or new hair colors, which automatically equates to them being the best. But fights like Uraraka vs Bakugo or Deku vs Todoroki show how strategy is just as important as strength. Even though both of the physically weaker characters lost in those fights, but whatever. The series also does a good job establishing most of the main cast, with a few exceptions here and there. So I guess I'll talk about all the major players that we love. First, there's the protagonist.
Deku it is!
Green Boy is an okay lead for a shonen story and one that we usually don't expect to see. Most shonen protagonists are usually headstrong and confident from the start, or just too stupid to know when to back down. Sometimes it's a bit of both. But Deku is a weak-ass pussy who's gifted with immense power, and not the type of power that he can control right off the bat. He literally breaks his arms whenever he uses them in a fight. And I like this. It puts brains over brute strength. Midoriya has to be reserved and tactical about how he utilizes his abilities. He can't just punch through everything with no consequences. Even when he gets his full Cal upgrade and can get a few more hits in, he has to hold back and keep from losing control. My one gripe is the overplayed gags surrounding him, like how he's remained a spineless softie even after getting into the #1 hero school, or how after all this time he still doesn't have the balls to tell off Bakugo or just accept that they can't be friends. There's also a huge issue surrounding his induction into the hero world, but I'll get into that later. Katsuki Bakugo is another interesting character case to me. He was first presented as the most unlikable, flamboyant, and irredeemable asshole ever. but now every Hiroaka fangirl across the planet wants to sleep with him. I am personally not the biggest Bakugo fan, mainly because I find his aggressive nature to be a tad bit over-exaggerated and distracting.
Damn it! What are you doing here, Deku?
Oh, hey there, Kacchan! Maybe calm down a
Don't you
little.
dare tell me what to do!
Bakugo, behave yourself!
Like, it was funny at first, but now it's just concerning, making him yet another example of overplayed gags. Although it's better than him just being another discount Sasuke. He mainly works as a foil to Deku. Despite having the same goal and respect for All Might, they're complete opposites. Bakugo was born with immense power and has always had people surrounding him who praise him, while Deku was born quirkless and has always ended up following others. But as I said, the anger is just a tad too much for the guy. Seriously, why is nobody else bothered by this? Why are Bakugo fans in real life and people in the series just ignoring his psychopathic attitude? Even if he's strong and talented, he has to understand that being a guy who threatens to murder children just for looking at him funny won't make him a pro hero anytime soon. And being a kid with literal explosion powers should make his excessive threats and unhinged attitude even more of a big deal. I think he does have potential though. One of my favorite moments with Bakugo was at the start of the sports festival, where he just straight up says that he's gonna win and everyone else is just a minor roadblock. He was calm yet cruel at the same time. It was a great evolution from him just being a cocky schoolboy. He remained prideful but realized that he needed results to back up his big mouth. And then he's right back to yelling at everyone like none of that happened. He even has to be chained down like a dog at the end of the sports festival. But on the other hand, he does truly know right from wrong and wants to protect people, even if it's for the wrong reasons. Throughout the series, we get hints of an actual human emotion from him to remind us that he's not a demented man-child. Like when he breaks down after All Might's retirement, or cries like a baby when losing to Deku in Season 1. So I suppose that there's still hope for him. Somewhere. Not really. Now moving on to the symbol of peace, All Might. I don't even know where to begin with this guy. He's literally the most perfect OP anime character ever. No offense to Saitama, of course. I love Saitama from One Punch Man as much as the next guy, but he's a parody. His story and strength aren't meant to be taken seriously. All Might, on the other hand, is the perfect example of how to properly nerf OP characters in a power-escalating shonen. His strength has a time limit and is slowly dwindling down now that he's passed it on to Izuku. So whenever he actually fights, it's a straight up event, and whenever he's pushed to the edge, we know that shit's about to get real. The idea of being a symbol of peace is something that I also really like. Even if All Might dies, which he probably will near the end of the series, what he stands for lives on in the people he trains and the people who look up to him, like the Captain America title for example. Also, this is totally unrelated, but I might as well bring this up now. Why is no one else bothered by how All Might just went buff right in the middle of a grocery store when there was a crowd of people in front of him? What if someone turned around while he was changing? What if someone in the grocery store saw him? What if there were security cameras in the street? How can you be this careless and then criticize Deku for telling Bakugo about One for All, you fucking hypocrite? This whole peace symbol thing even impacts other heroes in the story, like All Might's Bakugo-esque rival and number 2 hero, Endeavor. Endeavor also happens to be my favorite character in Hiroaka alongside Best Boy Dabi, of course. He's a man filled to the brim with pride and ego. Once All Might retires, he's finally declared the number 1 pro hero. Something that he's always wanted, but he hates this because he didn't earn it. It was just handed to him. He only wants to be number 1 if he gets it fair and square, which is very noble, although it's coming from the guy who abuses his family and hates everyone around him. I also want to know how it's funny that people think Endeavor is irredeemable because he beats his wife, but then they go and jack off to Vegeta from Dragon Ball, a guy who's literally murdered hundreds of innocents across the galaxy, yet he's allowed to develop as a character and raise a family. That's just really interesting to me. But there's still one big problem surrounding all of this and having All Might as a supposed inspirational symbol. It's not for everyone. The series is trying to promote a message about how anyone can be a hero, but then it does a full 180 and implies otherwise.
Is it possible to become a hero even if I don't have a quirk? I'm a normal kid without any powers. Could I ever hope to be someone like you?
The sad truth is that not everyone can become a hero, because the world's unfair and doesn't work that way. Hell, the show even says so in the first episode. We all know deep down that characters like Koda and Asui will never have what it takes to rival powerhouses like Todoroki or Bakugo, no matter how hard they train or how many inner monologues they have. It's all a matter of luck, being more of the right superpower, which can literally be anything since most quirks aren't genetic and just come out of nowhere. Basically, anyone can be a hero, but not everyone. Now, I would actually be okay with this. In fact, I want the series to enforce this idea. Have someone spreading the message that I just said. #anyone, not everyone. Maybe show us more of these quirkless minorities on Earth and how they get pushed around for literally just being normal human beings. Aside from Melissa and Dave in the Hiroaka movie, we haven't really seen many quirkless people that are major characters. No, Deku and All Might do not count because they were given powers eventually. There could be a whole arc of anti-quirk humans fighting against oppression like the Equalizers in Legend of Korra. Just imagine All Might having to fight the very people he's worked to inspire, or Deku trying to ease the tension only to be called out for abandoning his people. By inheriting One for All, Deku's basically been included into the 1%. He can't really relate to the little guys anymore, which could create a mental dilemma for him. But instead, everyone's parading around and pretending that they actually have a chance in this profession, and nobody, whether they be a villain or hero, is telling them otherwise. You can't just have your cake and eat it too. I mean, unless you're Sato, of course. Koei Horikoshi, the creator of My Hero Academia, has kind of walked himself into a corner with this. Characters like All for One are so overpowered that you'll need immense strength to beat them. Someone with frog powers or sticky head balls will be practically useless against him, and that kind of kills it for me. I'm not really saying that the series has been written so that Deku is quirkless through the whole thing and has to fight people with his mind or whatever. That would be admittedly pretty boring. But more could have been done to balance the cast skill and power overall. Superpowers are just so unlimited that they make Dragon Ball's power scaling look reasonable. The next villain could literally just be a random kid who's born with a super strength quirk that makes him 200 times stronger than All Might was in his prime. So then they decide to rule the world because why not? I mean, you can't call it crazy because there's no limit to what quirks can be. 'Tis the curse of the superhero universe. And as an inspirational narrative, this story is not very inspiring, at least to me. This happens to be the case with most shonen starring quote-unquote underdogs, because these guys usually privileged as fuck and have no right to act like they're below everybody else. Yeah, kids, no matter where you're born or what people tell you, you can be a hero and achieve your dreams. You know, as long as you constantly stumble upon a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of logic-breaking superpowers. Think about it. The only reason that Deku was in this running game in the first place is because the strongest man in the world just so happened to run into him. And he just so happened to find out that man's greatest secret. And the villain that man was apprehending just so happened to break free in an area that Deku just so happened to be passing. And Deku just so happens to be stupid enough to run into a fiery danger zone blocked off by pros that... You see what I'm getting at here? This is the type of stereotypical story you see in Marvel characters like Spider-Man, who are coincidentally bitten by a radioactive spider and blessed with superpowers. But the reason Spider-Man works and Deku doesn't is because of the characterization surrounding them, but more on that later. Not to mention that he has the one and only All Might as his personal mentor. Let that sink in for a moment. People who say that Midoriya is totally relatable and an underdog protagonist need to keep in mind that he's being supervised and personally trained by the #1 hero in the world, despite being a random nobody that All Might just met that very day. And he was shortly afterwards gifted with the most powerful quirk in all of existence, just because he did something stupid, I mean totally brave, for 20 seconds. Sure, he trained to inherit One for All, but that was through the power of montage. And there was also someone much better, older, lined up for that power, but we'll get to him very soon. I personally think that it would have been a lot more reasonable if Deku was trained under someone lesser known like Gran Torino, even though All Might gifted him with One for All, because All Might, being a world-renowned icon and everything, wouldn't have enough time to watch over or even talk to Deku that often. This would also make the time that they get to spend together a lot more impactful. Now, as far as Deku being gifted with One for All, I think it's safe to say he was given that purely out of bias. Toshinori saw this aspiring yet worthless child and couldn't help but think of himself back in the day. So Deku was a reflection of his past of sorts. And that's not necessarily bad, but it's never truly justified. All Might and Deku talk about how the power of One for All could potentially have been passed on to someone else other than Deku, like Mirio or Todoroki. And to that I say, why not? Why not give this legendary power to someone else other than Midoriya? Imagine what Todoroki could do with that. I mean, he's already an infinitely more interesting character than Deku is, but his tragic backstory and literal scar that it gave him make him a fan favorite hands down. Deku, on the other hand, has literally nothing. He's just a nerd who likes superheroes, so he's blessed with the most OP power in existence just because of that. No tragic upbringing or serious flaws to overcome. He gets chosen over Mirio, a guy with the true heart of a hero, a badass quirk, and a design that legit made me think he was All Might's son. He's the perfect candidate for a new symbol of peace, which is why Horikoshi drew and wrote him the way that he is. But despite how self-aware the series is about Deku's one-note characterization, that doesn't change the fact that it's one-note characterization. Ochako, Todoroki, and even Bakugo would make infinitely better candidates for a main character. But Deku just wants to be a hero so he can save people. Nothing more, nothing less. And you know who else wants to be a hero to save people just because they can? Nearly everyone in UA. I mean, you don't have to be the most complex character in existence, but you need to have something. Something to drive you. Whether it's because you're an OP introvert seeking a thrill or a flamboyant outcast seeking to prove yourself. Hell, even Asta from Black Clover has more characterization than Midoriya. At least Asta actually works to obtain his MacGuffin superpowers. The guy's only able to use his anti-magic swords because he's physically strong enough from years of intense bodybuilding and was basically born with a disability. Deku just trained for a couple months leading to the UA exams and then he barely even passed them, yet he's somehow a top tier character now. And I don't want to seem like I'm hating on Deku just because Asta is hotter, I mean just because he's physically more buff than him. The thing is that Deku never really actually tried to become a hero before getting gifted with his superpowers. He never tried to work out or practice fighting people to learn an advantage, he just sat around and fanboyed in his journal. Asta, on the other hand, did everything in his power to remain relevant before getting his grimoire, and keep in mind that they're both about the same age. Look, I won't tell you how to feel about Deku, love him all you want, he's an okay guy, but in my opinion, I just think a little characterization could go a long way. Also, Asta's hot as fuck, so. Now back to the power gap for a bit. One common defense I've seen for this argument is that while characters like Deku and Bakugo are powerful, they're also very smart. And to an extent that's true. All Bakugo can really do is blast explosion puffs from his palms. He has to be in close proximity to actually deal damage and has a very limited hit range. But he's able to use that one simple ability to fly, counter enemies, and at least supercharge flamethrower blast. That and he's somehow okay with being super sweaty 24/7.
The story of the Krusty Krab is a story of one man's hard work, perseverance, vision, determination, and sweat. But mostly his sweat.
Still, that isn't the case for everyone. Shigaraki doesn't have to understand the anatomy of human skin to deteriorate one's body. Eraserhead simply stares at someone and then they're useless. And despite how crafty Mineta can get with his balls, I don't see him standing a chance against Togata or Dabi. Speaking of bad guys, Hiroaka's villains are ironically where most of my main gripes stem from. So let's talk about them, starting with Stain. Now, in my original version of this video essay, I openly declared that I thought Stain was overrated and not that good of a villain. But after some thinking, I take back what I said. Now, Stain is admittedly pretty badass, and he shows us a new way of life in this series. His reasons for villainy aren't to rule the world or something else overly ridiculous. It's because he hates the modern heroes. Superheroes nowadays are more focused on the fame and fortune aspects rather than actually saving people or keeping them safe. All they want to do is flaunt their big muscles and get rich. And a pro hero highlighted in this arc, Endeavor, is the perfect example of this. He's a terrible parent who's only in this job for the praise and attention, at least before All Might steps down. But Stain is a fucking maniac! He's out there cutting people down just because he doesn't agree with them. Not to mention that this guy runs around in the most sketchy and intimidating looking costume imaginable. If you call yourself the hero killer, dress like a vampire ninja, and kill the people that civilians look up to, nobody is going to want to listen to your ideology, no matter how cool it may be. Now, if his hypocritical actions and insanity were brought up as actual plot points, then I could give him some leeway. You can make supervillains with flawed philosophies who are actually really awesome and compelling. But people in the series, and fans of Hiroaka in real life, end up thinking that Stain is legit and start buying fucking merch of him, despite the fact that he never actually made his views public or had any actual fans beforehand. Now brace yourselves, because I'm about to compliment Black Clover for a second. Say what you will about Black Clover, that's all good. I personally think that it's gotten a lot better over time and it's very underrated, but my point is that there's one character in the series who I really like, and he's about to join the anime adaptation as of me recording this. His name is Zora. Zora is the son of Zara, an old magic knight, and despite being a weakling with no magic power in a world where magic is everything, constantly getting mocked by his superiors, Zara would stop at nothing to retain the honor of his squad and help anyone in need. He was a true magic knight, and Zora recognized that. So he pretty much becomes the Stain of Black Clover. Zora openly mocks the Magic Knights for being selfish and bloated, because most of them are, not to mention that he was a bit of a hypocrite himself. However, the series actually points this out. Amidst the chaos, Asta steps up as the voice of reason for both the Magic Knights and Zora, explaining the importance of defending their kingdom and what makes a true hero. And this actually means something to Zora, because it's coming from a guy who started as a weakling with no magic power, in a world where magic is everything, constantly getting mocked by his superiors, yet he refused to give up in the face of danger and would stop at nothing to help people in need. My point behind all of this is that there was a missed opportunity surrounding Stain, and Zora is a perfect example of how to approach such a character. Zora works because he actually interacts with the snobby elites that he hates. He makes sure that they hear him and feel guilty for being the way that they are. His philosophy and views actually leave an impact that feels earned. Now, Stain definitely isn't lame or poorly written, but he could have been way better if he actually challenged the system head on, instead of just striking people from the shadows like a pussy. That just makes him a straight up villain, and not like a philosophical makes you think kind of villain, just a villain. And to make things even worse, he's seemingly out of the picture for good now. I suppose that the effect that Horikoshi was going for was to make him a martyr of sorts for people to reflect on, but I ain't really feeling it. The League of Villains. These guys are literally just the stereotype bad guy bunch, but that's okay. Kind of. This is a case where the series is actually self-aware in its execution. You see, the League's leader, Shigaraki, is given the Eren effect. What I mean by that is, like Eren in Attack on Titan, he's purposely written poorly at first and made an unlikable character for people to complain about. But then it turns out that was the point all along, and now he's a much more compelling person. But other members don't exactly get a pass in this regard. Most of the League's recruits are just crazy people who only want to join to wreck stuff because why not? Their characterization adds up to being really mysterious or just flat out insane. Even Best Boy Dabi lacks any real personality. For now. I don't even understand the way they go about their business. The whole kidnap Bakugo operation, for example, was pretty dumb and poorly thought out if you ask me. Even if he's naturally aggressive, the guy's been raised in a society that praises and respects heroes, and unlike most of these evil rejects, he's lived a happy and privileged life where most people admire his power and look up to him. So like hell he'd ever consider joining their group, and they should have known that. It's really unclear what they're trying to do as an organization, especially with the Nomu, which for some reason they only had one of that was capable of matching All Might, while most that follow are significantly weaker. Their first attack at the end of Season 1 was pretty intimidating and established their group as a serious threat. But since then they've been a bit uncoordinated. They just sit around talking about how everything sucks and that they should burn the planet like emo millennials. Then once every few arcs they show up to remind us, the audience, the UA students, that they exist. Even though they don't actually do anything during these ambushes. Like, I really love Dabi, if that's not already obvious, but he hasn't actually done anything substantial in the entire series as of me recording this. Aside from setting a forest on fire. But his brother, Shoto Todoroki, could have easily done that too. Holy shit, Dabi hasn't done anything. What has Dabi done? Dabi, he didn't even fight Eraserhead, that was a clone. Holy shit, Dabi hasn't done shit in the whole series. Why is this guy popular? That, or the series is trying to build up to some sort of master plan. Like, maybe all this is happening for a reason. The UA raids, the rise and fall of Stain, the apprehension of their leader, the retirement of All Might, the potential brainwashing of Bakugo. There might be something big that the story and the villains are building up to all in all. And if that's the case, then I can drop this complaint. That is, as long as the end result is actually good. Now, here I would rant about Overhaul or Gentle Criminal, but those two are actually my favorite villains in the whole series. Yes, even Gentle, because they have almost nothing to do with the League. They're just bad guys with their own motivation that the heroes must stop and aren't connected to some overarching story that's being dragged out for far too long. Unlike the big man himself, All For One. All For One is pretty terrifying, there is no denying that. His look, his theme, his quirks, he's the perfect final boss, a god among men. The greatest foe that Deku one day has to face and potentially put an end to for good. His fight with All Might at the end of Season 3 was one of the series' most emotional moments, as it showed us that light can prevail even in the darkest of hours. But even then, it's not over. All For One will one day escape his captors and continue to wreak havoc, and that day our heroes have to be ready to fight back, without the strength of the symbol of peace behind them. That's what's really scary about the guy. He leaves a sense of fear even when he isn't in the room. Knowing that he's alive is enough to tear apart society. But All For One is literally just a troll. I cannot be the only guy who's noticed this. Everything he does is to mess with All Might, just because he can. The guy makes Shigaraki leader of his league because he just so happens to be related to Toshinori's dead master. So now All Might will be extra conflicted whenever he sees the guy in a grocery store or something, I guess. And even in the My Hero Academia 2 Heroes movie, it's revealed that All For One actually told the metal-bending supervillain guy and his goons to work for Dave, All Might's old friend, because All Might would be mentally torn if he found out that his best friend went against the law and worked with bad guys. I'm not even kidding. They had to throw the big bad of the series into this random movie's plot. It couldn't just be its own story that happened to follow a villain or villains unrelated to All For One and his stupid league. And it doesn't even change anything story-wise. Whether or not All For One was involved, All Might would still be shocked upon learning that Dave did something unruly. So what was the point? As you can see, this movie shines a perfect example on how All For One is being overhyped. The series is trying way too hard to get across that he's so scary and such a major threat. I mean, it's not bad to hype a character, but they're really overdoing it. Just show the guy one shot in a pro hero or two DBZ style and I'll get the memo. And even with all the power that All For One has, he seems to just keep on wasting time. Logically, All Might should have been killed during his fight with the guy in Season 3, but I suppose that the Symbol of Peace only won because he pushed himself far past his limits in Plus Ultra or whatever. But with his unlimited quirk set, I don't see exactly what's keeping him from just doing what he wants to do. If the number one hero in the world can't kill this guy, then what chance do the others have? Just walk up to UA, take out their weak-ass security systems, and then slaughter all the kids. I'm sure that would piss off All Might. And nobody there, not even Eraserhead, could stop you. Now, despite my complaints, I still think that All For One is a pretty good character who ironically just needs less screen time and less involvement. Leave him to be a mysterious working from the shadows type of mastermind. Such a character as himself would work better if he remained unbiased and focused on the big picture instead of just making All Might cry at any moment. Which is... Wait, what the fuck does All For One want again? There's another nitpick that I have on my mind. It's not just in My Hero Academia, but it still has it regardless. Nobody dies. Now, this in itself isn't an issue. I don't need to see people getting murdered in order to enjoy something, but there needs to be some sense of dire stakes. I mean, like, come on. Deku breaks his arms too many times, so now he has scars that Recovery Girl can't heal, but right afterwards he gets his full cow upgrade and never has to worry about that again. And never gets his eyeball gorged out while fighting a full-powered Nomu, but then he's perfectly fine and back home days later. Eraserhead was absolutely brutalized by the League at the end of Season 1 and basically bled his soul out, but after a couple episodes of wearing bandages, he was right back to normal. I really liked Aizawa, but he shouldn't have just walked that off, although I believe he did receive a slight loss in eyesight, so that's kind of a casualty. The only major death on the good guys team is Sir Night-Eye if I recall correctly, but everyone seemingly moved on from that in a chapter or two, and keeping someone like him alive would have been problematic due to how OP his quirk is. Hell, he was just introduced in that arc anyways. And aside from All Might's retirement, the only other major casualty that I can think of is Muriel losing his quirk, but he's still perfectly fine without it. Not trying to jack off to Black Clover more than I already have, but even that handled this kind of scenario in a better fashion. Although, just to clarify, I am not saying that Black Clover as a series is better than My Hero Academia overall. Do not try to twist my words here. I mean, I personally think that Black Clover is better, but I mean, that's just me, whatever the fuck. At one point in Black Clover, Asta gets both of his arms broken to a point that not even recovery magic can heal them. And he kinda needs those so that he can hold his anti-magic swords, which are the only reason that he has a chance of becoming the Wizard King and rivaling Yuno in the first place. Now that one chance has been practically destroyed forever. Of course, Asta does end up getting his arms fixed eventually, but it takes a whole arc to get there, he has to bust his balls fighting without them, and he's nearly turned into a mindless demon warrior as a consequence, so him regaining his arms is more of a reward rather than a retcon. The cast of Hiroaka is just so lovable and innocent that I doubt any of them will be biting the dust or getting seriously damaged anytime soon, especially considering that there's a hero who heals all of their injuries with kisses, and that sucks because their lives shouldn't be this easy if they're going to become pros one day. Now, one last thing I want to touch on is the big problem that holds Hiroaka back from being perfect, the one thing that holds it from being the masterful piece of storytelling that it wants to be. It's a shonen.
Please clap.
Allow me to explain. As I said before, I like shonen. I'm an African-American teenage Dragon Ball fan, for God's sake. But I don't go to shonen for complex stories with meaningful themes. I go to shonen to watch buff dudes with spiky hair beat each other up. And Hiroaka has that, but it's quite limited. Despite being a series about fucking superheroes, we spend 70% of our time watching a bunch of over-sexualized preteens, training, decorating their dorms, and becoming friends. It's not even like Teen Titans-style storytelling, where the super kids go on adventures and bounce off one another with no grown-ups to boss them around. In MHA, the cast are restricted to a school environment, with laws preventing them from using their quirks freely. So it's all moe girls and awkward nerd love instead. But I don't care about that stuff, I want action! Now, to be fair, the shonen formula has its perks. While slow, we get more time to flesh out characters, which is good for a cast as large as Hiroaka's. Almost everyone has their goals and struggles explored, and feats/accomplishments feel a lot more impactful since we watched our heroes slowly build up to them. But still, the slow pace keeps action and adventure to a minimum. We have to wait months upon months for an actual villain versus hero battle because we're spending 10 chapters on Deku and his friends singing in a band or preparing for the school festival. But this is the anime where a buff blonde dude with Brock eyes went one-on-one with a steroid bird monster, and instead of focusing on that, we watch a 12-year-old's reaction to Mina's ass. Conclusion. I like this series. I swear, I really do. And it's because I like it that I'm hard on it. Do I think that My Hero Academia is a subversive superhero adventure and one of the best stories out of the last decade? No, not even close. Absolutely not. Like, One Punch Man will always be superior in my book. But I'm still a fan. The series is fun and I'm loving almost everything about it. Still, nothing is perfect, despite what its dedicated worshippers will have you believe. Maybe I'm just looking for flaws. That seems to be a tendency that edgy teens given internet access like me have nowadays. Whenever I see something that's critically acclaimed, I refuse to accept that. But if it makes you feel any better, I have to dig really deep to form critiques on this subject. Because as much as I want to hate it, I can't. The plot is mostly airtight, and almost all of the characters get established pretty well. Horikoshi has a vision to surpass freaking One Piece in popularity with this anime, and as crazy as that is, I think he can actually get there. As we should all know, a lot of people like this series. It's getting people who claim to hate anime into anime, and while I have my own opinions on that matter, it's a pretty impressive feat nonetheless. And, that's all I have to say.
Holy stinking super crap!
Heyo, Alcatabra here. Thank you for watching this video essay. I did this one quite some time ago and it got blocked, but now I am back with a brand new, completely revamped version of it, and that is what you have been listening to. I made a blog on Amino of this quite some time ago, but this video is a much more updated version of that. So this is the official final product. This is the advanced version of my blog, of my old video essay. This is the final official product of it. And I hope you enjoyed it. I was very limited with the footage, as you can see. But more importantly, do consider liking and subscribing, all that good stuff, blah, blah, blah. I have more projects planned for stuff like this. Like, I want to cover Dragon Ball. I want to cover other anime I like. Some other nerdy stuff. So be sure to stick around for stuff like that when I make video essays on those things. I don't know if they'll all be as widespread as this one was, but I'm working to make more consistent quality content from now on, and I hope you consider sticking around to see it. If you do not agree with me completely on my points in here, that's fine. You can tell me how you feel in the comments. This was meant to be a critique of sorts. It's not as advanced as most critiques would be, but it is still a critique of My Hero Academia regardless. So if you really like the series, that's fine, and you're welcome to critique me if you want. I will take any criticism you give me. You can be, as long as you're respectful, and I just hope you enjoyed the video overall. Be sure to share it, show other people if you want, and yeah. So be sure to stick around, and Alcatabra out.